I haven't talked about Bitcoin in a while. I know on the Peter Schiff show, I spoke about Bitcoin when the price first kind of broke below the 600 level. It had been trading around 600, a little higher for a while, and people were talking about, well, you know, it's kind of stabilized here. And when it first kind of broke below it, I talked about technically, and this maybe not, you know, maybe when it broke below like 590-ish, because it was less right around. It was either a little bit below 600, a little bit above 600, and it was in that area basically from mid-May until mid-August. And then it broke down. It broke out of that range, and it got down maybe just touched just slightly below 500. And I talked about it then in terms of the technical breakdown that I saw in the Bitcoin market. And again, remember, I'm on record. I've said that I thought the market topped in the beginning of the year, like late 2013, when you had that big rally in Bitcoin, when Bitcoin got to over an ounce of gold, right? Briefly, one Bitcoin was trading on exchanges like Mt. Gox, which of course doesn't exist anymore, but for over $1,200 an ounce, or $1,200 a Bitcoin, which at the time briefly exceeded the price of gold, which was also a little bit over $1,200 an ounce at the time. And that's about where gold is now. It's still in the low 1200s. But Bitcoin this week traded below 400. The low that I've seen so far, and again, I'm recording this on Friday afternoon, so it could go lower, later in the day or by the time you hear this podcast. But so far, the low this morning was 378.78, and that's the low from Bitstamp. And as I record this, the price is 399, and it's down sharply on the week because this week, last week we were still in the upper 400s, so we've dropped 15-20% or so on the week. I mean, if this was a stock market, you'd say it was a crash, right? But it's not. Bitcoin doesn't look at it that way. But this is a big decline, and so now you're talking about Bitcoin down from a 1,200 plus high to now below 400. So Bitcoins have lost more than 2/3 of their value on the year. If you just look at year to date, Bitcoins began the year around 800. So we're down about 50% on the year, which means for 2014, Bitcoins are one of the worst, in fact, maybe the worst performing asset class, if you want to call it an asset class. And I remember last year, everybody was talking about all the deflation in terms of Bitcoin. Like, hey, if you had Bitcoin, prices are going down for you. Well, this year, all you've experienced is a big increase in prices if you're buying stuff using your Bitcoin, because prices have doubled this year in terms of Bitcoin, right? So you're talking about massive inflation from that perspective as far as the impact on prices in Bitcoin. And, I'm reading online trying to figure out, what kind of coverage they're getting of the Bitcoin decline and how people are explaining it. And one of the laughable explanations, several people are trying to blame it on the Alibaba IPO, which we'll talk about. But they're saying, well, people are trying to raise money for the Alibaba IPO by selling their Bitcoin. I mean, come on. I mean, first of all, almost all of the Alibaba IPO allocation went to mutual funds. Very few individual investors got those shares. Almost all of it went to these big funds. And the big funds aren't paying for their Alibaba with Bitcoin. So the first chance that any individuals had to buy Bitcoin was after the stock opened. And, they priced Alibaba at 68, but the first trade was 92.7. But the first time anybody could have bought it was this morning. Now, how many people who have brokerage accounts decided to pay for their Alibaba with their Bitcoins? I mean, even if you own Bitcoin, chances are you bought your Alibaba with something else. I mean, you don't have all of your net worth in Bitcoins. I mean, if you got a Charles Schwab account, chances are if you want to buy some Alibaba, either you have some cash or maybe you'll sell some of your Facebook or your Twitter or your Amazon, and you'll use that money to buy your Alibaba. I mean, you're not going to use your Bitcoins. And of course, if you were going to use your Bitcoins, you wouldn't wait till the last couple of days to do it. You would have had it done it a week ago or two, because you have to sell your Bitcoins, get your money, fund it into get it into your brokerage account, because those trades settle in a couple of days. So you wouldn't wait till the last day. I mean, everybody's known about this Bitcoin IPO for weeks. So if you were planning on using your Bitcoins, not the Bitcoin IPO, the Alibaba IPO, excuse me. So if you were planning on using your Bitcoins to fund your Alibaba purchase, you would have sold those Bitcoins weeks ago. You wouldn't have waited till the last couple of days to do it. So this is all, the bulls trying to come up with what might be a plausible excuse to explain away why nobody should worry. Because, it's just temporary. It's just, it's all the Alibaba IPO. And so once this is over, the market's going to come back up. And, maybe it's just wishful thinking, right? But it is not going to happen. I think the downtrend is very powerful, and it will continue. Now, I did see some people write about what I talked about. And I talked about this on my radio show, and especially when I began accepting Bitcoin using BitPay, when people can go buy precious metals from me. And when I first announced that we were accepting Bitcoins for gold, I said that I would encourage anybody who has Bitcoins to take advantage of that and exchange them for gold at my company. Because when we did that, you can buy over a half ounce of gold with a Bitcoin. Now you can't even buy a quarter ounce of gold with your Bitcoin. And I think that's going to continue to drop. But what I said at the time is that when it comes to merchants accepting Bitcoin, Bitcoin will be a victim of its own success. And what I meant was that as more merchants sign up to accept Bitcoin, that makes it easier for people that have Bitcoins to spend them on stuff. And every merchant who sells merchandise for Bitcoin, including me, the minute the sales are made, the Bitcoins are sold. They are sold for dollars. And if there's not another buyer wanting to buy those Bitcoins, the price has to go down. And that is what is going on. More and more merchants are signing up, and so more and more people are spending their Bitcoins, and so these Bitcoins are all for sale, and there aren't enough new buyers. Meanwhile, you do have a lot of people mining Bitcoins too. And they have to sell the coins that they mine. And it's expensive to mine them because they got to cover their electric bills. And so the miners, they all ramped up. And now they're mining and they're selling. You don't have the new buyers. Meanwhile, now you have something that you didn't have a year ago. You have lots of people with losses. More people who own Bitcoins are losing money on their Bitcoins, right? You do have people that got in early, right, that made a fortune. And they're still making a fortune even at 400 if they paid less than $1 or $5 or $10. But numbers-wise, more people, I believe, are losing money in Bitcoins than are making money. And as the price goes down, these are more people who aren't going to want to be involved anymore. You have a PR problem because now they have a bad taste in their mouth because they bought Bitcoins and they're losing money. And I still believe one of the main reasons that so many people got in is because they wanted to get in on the action. It was greed that drove the market. People believed if I adopt early and I buy these Bitcoins, that when everybody else is using them, they're going to be very valuable and I'm going to get rich. Well, as the price goes down, more and more people are going to realize that they're not going to get rich on Bitcoins, but if they have too many, they're going to go broke. And so pretty soon it's not going to be greed of wanting to get rich and not wanting to miss out. It's going to be fear of losing your money, fear of losing your profits if you're one of the lucky ones that got in early, or wanting to mitigate your losses if you're one of the fools who got in late, right? So you're going to have all this selling pressure, which is going to undermine the appeal of Bitcoins even more. And it's going to be a self-perpetuating spiral. These are not the lows. I've been saying, and I said when it first broke below 600, 580, 590, my price target was 350. That was where I thought the next technical objective, because that is the low for Bitcoins for this year. And so I think if we get down around that level, 350, 340, whatever, there might be a bounce. Maybe we'll even bounce back up to 400. I don't know. Or maybe we'll just go through 350 and we'll drop down to 250. I don't know. But I do believe that this downtrend is going to continue. And that the people who are buying are going to lose a lot of money. And the people who are selling, right, are the ones that are doing the right thing. And you can't just explain, like, there are people now that are saying, oh, this volatility is normal. We had it before. Bitcoin holders are used to it. Yes, there was a lot of volatility on the way up. They went to 100, back down to maybe 50, then up to 150. There was volatility as the bubble was inflating. But this is different. This is volatility as the bubble is deflating. And remember, as they had claimed, the Bitcoin promoters always claimed that as more people began using the currency, the volatility would go away, that it would stabilize. But now it's not. Now it's becoming even more volatile, even though more people. Now, another thing that I think could be causing the downward pressure, I looked on this exchange, Bitstamp, and I noticed that they recently began accepting stop orders, meaning that you can put an order to sell below the market. And I thought, well, that's very dangerous in an illiquid market like Bitcoin, because a stop order means that you put an order lower down. Let's say Bitcoin is at 450, and you're afraid that if it breaks below 400, it's going to keep going. And so you buy it at 450, and you put an order, a stop order, to sell it at 399. At 399. Like, well, if it breaks 400, I want to get out. Well, if enough people put their stops beneath the market, the book is open. People can see where the stops are, and they can deliberately try to hit them. They can sell off the market to trigger the stops, because then you get an avalanche of selling. The price drops, and the people who hit the stops can buy back the ones that they sold and make some money, and it's called running stops. And that's what's going on in this market. And also, the other problem for Bitcoin is you don't have enough shorts in the market. Like other stocks, you have shorts who then buy into the dips, and that cushions the decline. You have short covering. But you don't get a lot of short covering in Bitcoin because there's not a lot of people actually short the market. I mean, they're pretty much all longs. There's not an exchange where you can borrow Bitcoins and go short. So that puts even more downward pressure because you don't have the shorts buying into the market. So there's a long way down. And again, the other problem is a year ago, there was Bitcoin. There might have been a half dozen other digital currencies, something like that. There's now 500 different digital currencies. Now, many of them have tiny market caps, but the point is that Bitcoin has a lot of competition that it didn't have a year ago. And not only does it have a lot of competition, it has a PR problem because you have so many people who are now going to be telling their friends about all the money they lost in Bitcoin, not about all the money they made. Meantime, in order to make Bitcoins more acceptable to the mainstream, because they needed to make the thing bigger. They needed to get more people in on Bitcoin because they needed to keep expanding it. So there were newer people, right? It's like it's like a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid or whatever you want to call it. They always need more people because the new buyers have to be able to sell their Bitcoin to somebody else. So they have to keep growing the market, growing the user base for Bitcoin. And so in order to do that, they had to appeal to a broader segment of the population, and they had to make the Bitcoins user-friendly to the governments and the banks. So all of a sudden, Bitcoin now, the transactions have to be reportable. There has to be licensing. There has to be monitoring. It can't be anonymous. All of a sudden, using Bitcoins, becomes like using a bank. The government's going to find out. And of course, the government knows what's going on online. I mean, you look at how many people have already been busted with Bitcoins, and not to mention all the Bitcoins that were embezzled or stolen out of Mt. Gox. Part of the idea was, hey, these can't be lost. They can't be stolen. It's anonymous. The government doesn't know about it. They can't. You can maintain your privacy. So a lot of people, free market guys, hard money guys, that might have been attracted to the anonymity and the privacy that existed with Bitcoin in the beginning when it was kind of a novelty and just a few people were using it. Well, now that reason no longer exists because you don't have it anymore. So the other people that came in to get rich quick. And now that they can't get rich quick, that they're just going broke slowly or now more quickly, that appeal is gone. So I think all of the reasons that people were using it are going to go away. And this nonsense about, well, how easy it is to use, none of that matters. It's only easy to use once you own the Bitcoin. But once you own the Bitcoin, now you're subjecting yourself to a huge loss. And that's not easy. And if you don't already own Bitcoin, it's a lot easier to just use your dollars or your euros or your Visa card or your MasterCard than going in and buying Bitcoin and risking the fact that before you spend them, the market drops 10 or 20%. And now whatever you wanted to buy is going to be that much more expensive. So the wind is coming out of the sails. And, I know I ruffled a lot of feathers in the Bitcoin community. And, and again, you could say, hey, it's still too early for me to say victory on it, even though the price is down. You could say, well, maybe the price will be 20 million, or whatever they thought, maybe this is just a dip. So yeah, I mean, it's possible that I'm wrong, right? It's possible. It's still too early. Now, at some point when we crack 100, maybe I'll be able to say I was right on this one. So I'm not going to do a victory lap or anything. I'm just, I still believe that I'm right, but I can't, declare victory for sure. I mean, I think it would be as premature as me accusing the people who think that the Fed's QE is a success by claiming victory now, by Paul Krugman, taking these victory laps saying, hey, I was proven right. He hasn't been proven right. So I think I'm closer to it than he is, but it's not 100%, right? I mean, it's certainly possible that Bitcoin can still work and rally, but I don't think it's very probable. And certainly, I think the people that did rush in and buy these things for $1,000 of Bitcoin, $900, $800, $700, a lot of those people are regretting those decisions. And I don't know that they're going to be buying anymore. I don't know that they're going to be telling their friends to buy anymore. And I think the people who didn't buy it at 700 or 800, they're not going to be thinking, hey, this is a great buying opportunity. I'm going to buy it now at 400. I think they're going to be saying, whew, I dodged a bullet. I'm glad I didn't buy that. No, there were actually some hedge funds. There was a couple of hedge funds that got in at around $700, $800 for Bitcoins. And I don't think other hedge funds are looking to join the party. They're probably, again, feeling good about themselves that they didn't bite on that. But as I said, I made a lot of waves in the community. And look, I know there are a lot of good people who unfortunately had their judgment clouded by the allure and the appeal of what they hoped Bitcoin could become. And I sympathize with that. But unfortunately, it couldn't work. And as much as people got blinded by the numbers, people thinking about how many millions or billions they were going to be worth when everybody went to Bitcoins. In fact, I even saw an article written, because when they were writing about Scotland and what they were going to do for currency, would they use the pound? There was actually an article that said, hey, why don't they could just use the Bitcoin, that Bitcoin could become the national currency of Scotland. How is that going to happen? Like, the Scots are actually going to denominate their pensions in Bitcoin. They're going to pay their workers and collect taxes in Bitcoin, that landlords are going to write their rent contracts. And I mean, how, naive can people be to actually accept that, to actually throw that possibility out there? But, this is groupthink. People get so wedded to a narrative and they're so emotionally and financially invested in it working out that's what people said to me. Oh, Peter Schiff, he doesn't get it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. There are people that said, yeah, Peter, I used to follow you, but I don't follow you anymore because you don't get Bitcoin. Why? I mean, why is it a litmus test? Right? Oh, if I don't believe Bitcoin is a wave of the future, then everything I say is worthless. I'm an idiot. I'm a fool. People had those attitudes about the .com stocks or about housing market. Look, I always knew that it couldn't work. I still believe it can't work because, again, it doesn't have any value other than the utility as a medium of exchange, which is worthless if it can't be a store of value. And just because the euro has problems and the dollar has problems doesn't mean that Bitcoin is the solution to those problems. And people tell me, well, gold doesn't have any real value either, doesn't have any intrinsic value. Yes, it does. You can use gold. Doesn't matter. You don't have to find, there's a use. You can make jewelry out of it. You can use it in electronics. You can use it in dentistry. I just read an article about a cancer cure that uses gold, particles of gold that are, injected into the body or whatever. But you can't inject anybody with a Bitcoin. You can't do anything. You can't make a Bitcoin necklace. You can't fill your teeth with Bitcoin. You can't put Bitcoins in a cell phone and use it as a conductor. You can't put it in a spaceship. It doesn't have any substance. And the fact that it's easy to transfer is meaningless. So are all the other digital currencies. They're all easy to transfer too. The question is, what are you transferring? If you're not transferring something that can store its value, it can't function as money, period. And all these ways that people are trying to back in valuation. Look, it's all the same kind of thing that happened in the dot-com bubble, eyeballs, click-throughs, all kinds of crazy ways to say, hey, we found some new way to value this asset because it's a new economy. This time it's different. It's not any different. A bubble's a bubble. It doesn't matter if it's the Keynesians who embrace it or free market libertarians who embrace it. They still are subjected to the same emotions, and they can still be blinded to reality by the promise of something new, especially if they think that something new is going to make them rich. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people, hopefully they didn't buy too many of these things, but a lot of people who had paper fortunes in Bitcoins who didn't sell any are going to watch those paper fortunes evaporate. It's going to be just like the people who watch their .com fortunes. There are plenty of people that work for .com companies that were completely believers. They never sold a single share of their company stock. And they watched it go all the way up, and they watched it come all the way back down. History repeats itself, and I think that some of the early adopters of Bitcoins are going to experience the same thing. I'm trying to help as many people as I can. If you're still holding these Bitcoins, do not go down with the ship. Go to my gold company, Schiff Gold, if you got enough Bitcoins left to buy some gold, and do it while you can still afford it. Because at some point, people that have Bitcoins want to be able to afford to buy any gold when the price is low enough. Right now, you got 10, 20 Bitcoins, 30 Bitcoins, you can buy some gold. At some point, you might not be able to buy a pack of chewing gum with those Bitcoins, if you can even get that.